Relationships with people and money are complicated. Our upbringing shapes in a very big way our relationship to the entire world, but especially, with money too, because if money was something that was a taboo topic or you never seemed to have enough money growing up, those types of situations or any type of money situation, based on how your upbringing was, can really influence how you deal with money later on and your relationship with money later on.
Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Well, today's show is going to be in a little different direction than we normally go. We're going to talk about money, something that we all need as a resource. If you don't have any of it, then you think about it constantly. And so today's guest, Ashely Micciche, is in the area of finance, in monetary management. And so it's just a pleasure to have a young person on the show to help us with that. Now, in the meantime, one of the things that really came up as part of the show discussion is just how important having goals, directions in life leads to our decision making and what we'll do and what we won't do. And so we have launched the new course, the e-course, depending on when you're listening to this show, the Quest for Purpose, based on my book of the same title, really giving you a roadmap, a step-by-step color, paint-by-numbers process to confirm your why in all areas of your life. It's transformational. I went through this myself in 1989. I can't say enough about it if you engage it. So it's there for you. If you ever wanted to be fully engaged and on purpose in life or know somebody who needs to be, then look into the new course, The Quest for Purpose. As always, thank you for being a listener. If you like what we're doing, please pass it on. Leave a positive comment on whatever platform you're listening on. And so today, enjoy the show with Ashely Micciche here on Secrets of Success. Welcome to the Secrets of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis. Well, in life, we have to have strategies, decisions, insights on, what we're supposed to do with our business. Now, if you don't own a business, we're going to be talking about a lot of life principles today as well, but I'm delighted to have, and I'm going to say young person because I actually could be her dad, and not that I'm going to give away her age because I know what it is, but we'd like to welcome Ashely Micciche to our show today. Ashely, welcome to Secrets of Success.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, Ashely, you have a lot of success already as a young person, and I'm just going to say that lightly. So we're going to delve into that here in a minute. But before we do, we always like to hear story. What is your story? Where did you grow up? What was going on? What's happening? So I know that you are on the show from Portland, but where were you born?
I was actually born in Portland. I grew up here, was born here. I even went to college at Portland State University, got my business finance degree there. And so I've never left, interestingly enough. But I think that's pretty rare these days. Most people kind of move around, and I still like it here. So I think I'll stay for now.
Well, there we go. And, being fellow West Coasters, we call it the Pacific Northwest. You're right there at the edge, right before you moved down into the California area. I remember when I did some work with Mark Victor Hansen from Chicken Soup, and he lives in LA. He says, when you leave California, resume normal behavior. So mind you, sometimes Portland gets in the news for other reasons. With that, Ashely, what was the growing up years like? Like, what did your parents do? What was sort of their professions, and what was home life like at your home in Portland?
My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and so she was running me and my sister around to sports practices. My sister and I played a lot of sports growing up. My sister especially is a very talented basketball player, and I'm actually quite a bit younger than my sister. I'm 11 years younger than my sister.
Wow, and how did that happen?
Just quite a long spacing there. Life circumstances, and I didn't come into the picture until later on. And so, but yeah, and so my sister being such a talented basketball player, a lot of my earliest memories growing up are just being a little gym rat running around and while she had practices and games and all that. My dad actually coached basketball as well. And so I actually thought I was going to be in the NBA, not the WNBA because that didn't exist back then, but I didn't realize there was a gender issue with me being able to be in the NBA. But I thought I was deluded enough to think I was going to be in the NBA until I was about 7 years old or so. But they used to say I was born with a basketball in my hand. So that was a lot of fun growing up. And I just really loved sports and tagging along with my dad to his games and my sister to her games. And that, I would say, more than anything, kind of defined the early years of my life. And then when I was in second grade, she went off to college, and then it was just me alone with my parents. And so that was
think about that. 11 years is a lot where, boom, off to college, and you're only in second grade. So what's your relationship like with your sister?
I would say we're not super close. We get along great, but she's not the first person I think to call or talk to if I'm dealing with something. I know I always envy other kids that I had growing up, who had siblings in the house. Because it can be lonely sometimes, and she would so after she left for college, she'd come home in the summertime, and I'd see her then. But it's been fun too because she goes through all of the life stages at kind of the same age that I did, but she's like a decade in front of me. So she had her first kid about 9 years before I had my first child. She got married about 10 years before I got married. And so it was nice to be able to go to her and say, and ask for her advice as someone who had been through it and had been living that for such a long time prior to when I went through that life change. So I would say that's maybe one of the biggest benefits of having just one other sibling who's much, much older. But my kids are all I have 3 kids, and they're all almost exactly 3 years apart. And it's really loud in our house. They're 6, 3, and then I have a newborn. And it was a lot quieter in my house growing up than it is here. So
no worries. You love it. I'm sure you love being a mom and a businesswoman all at the same time. And so that's great. Now, what did your dad do as a profession?
So his background was in due diligence for oil and gas limited partnerships. So he actually has a finance background as well, and that's what he was doing in the late 70s, early 80s, around the time when I came into the world. He then transitioned to working as a financial advisor. This was back in the old days when there weren't any financial advisors. Everyone was a stockbroker. And so that was kind of how he came into the world of finance. And when I graduated college in 2007, I had a business finance degree, not because I wanted to follow my dad in his footsteps, but I genuinely I wanted a business degree because I knew I could apply it to anything I decided to do, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do yet. And then I got the finance specialty within that because I got it. It made sense to me. I liked the number side of things. I've always liked math and statistics and numbers. And so when I graduated college, and I decided I would just try it out and join my dad in his financial advisory practice. And that was 13 years ago. So my dad's always been, for as long as I've been around, he's always been a financial advisor working with clients. And a lot has changed in our business since I started working with him. But it's a lot of fun. And then we decided in 2015, we wanted to cut ties with the big firm that we were working with and start our own boutique firm. And so it took a couple years of planning, and then we launched our firm. It'll be 3 years ago in about another month here. So
what's the name of your firm if people are going to look you up?
Yeah, so it's True North Retirement Advisors, and our specialty, part of the reason why we left the big firm is because our specialty is working with business owners and helping them with all of their personal investments and financial decisions, but also the exit plan for their business, and then working with them on their company retirement plan. So it's usually like a simple IRA or a 401k. That we help them with as well. So that's the specialty and the niche that we live in is working with and understanding the unique needs of business owners.
Mm. So Ashely, let's just kind of scroll back. When you were in high school, were you thinking that you wanted to do a business degree, or did you have some other sort of aspirations that might take you in a different direction?
No, I thought if I had a desk job, which is basically what I have now, I thought, well, I might as well just end it. I could never see myself working in a typical office environment or doing it. I think I wanted to be a river raft guide because I was applying for all of these jobs working at summer camps and those like adventure type places. And I actually did do that. I was a camp counselor at a summer camp in college, and I loved it. And I love working, especially working with the kids. It was a lot of fun. But I don't sort the tail end of college, I sort of became serious and realized that I probably could be a river raft guide and earn any sort of reasonable living wage doing that. And so I started to think more seriously about, okay, well, when I get into the working world after I graduate college, what do I enjoy doing? And I did enjoy the finance side of it. And so I wasn't sure if maybe I wanted to work in banking. One of my teachers really pushed me to work on the valuation side where, you might work for a large business or work for a large investment retail or mutual fund company analyzing stocks and but I didn't want to do that either because I really liked people and I'm very extroverted, and I thought I can't sit behind a spreadsheet all day and crunch numbers. So I tried out the financial world and being a financial advisor because I thought, well, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's the numbers that I like and the problem solving that I like, and there's never a dull moment. But then I also get to work with people. And so that's why I'm here 13 years later, because I found that even though I kind of stumbled into it and didn't really intentionally set out to do this, I find that it does check all those boxes for me. And they're really, especially working with business owners, there's never any business that's the same, no business owners that are even alike. And so every day is a challenge and every day is interesting, and I love that.
Cool. And Ashely, what's it like, you've been with your dad for over a decade. What's it like working with your dad?
In general, I really like it, but I will not paint it, gloss over it. It can be challenging at times. I think I'm very fortunate because unlike a lot of family businesses, I think the younger generation isn't given that chance to lead and make mistakes. And my dad really kind of threw me to the wolves very early on and basically said, here, you figure it out. There's a safety net, and you can always come to me, if you have questions or problems, and we can talk through those. But I was working with clients from day one, and that really accelerated my growth and just learning about how to work with clients and how to make those decisions. But I didn't have to make a lot of big mistakes because he was always there when I had questions or when there was a situation that I felt like it was a bit over my head.
Well, yeah, it is always nice to have a mentor that's close by.
Yeah.
And so I grew up on a dairy farm with my family. I lasted 2 years working with my dad, and then I've never gone back. So,
yeah.
35 years later, no, it's not ever going to happen.
No, and we have our...
together.
Yeah, and I think like any relationship, especially parent-child relation, there's just a different dynamic there. And we have our disagreements, but in general, I really like going to work with my dad every day, and I talk to people all the time who are just, they're like, oh, I would just do anything to be able to work with my mom or work with my dad, and so I try not to take it for granted too much. I enjoy it overall, but it's not without its
It has its
challenges.
moments, right?
Yes.
Because you're wearing multiple hats as you,
yeah.
Daughter, sister, partner, business partner, all of that coming together. So with that, Ashely, one of the things we really want to do on our podcast is make sure that the listeners get some practical advice. So I'm just going to throw some unplanned and unscripted questions to you. And that is around when you think about people in this whole concept of money. So I want you to sort of forget business. What are some of the insights you have learned? And you got to remember, this is a global podcast, so we're not just the U.S., and we don't even have a thing called a 401k. We call it RRSP here in Canada. But our podcast goes all around the world, and I have listeners in Australia or the U.K. or China. What are some principles you have learned about people and their money and their relationships there? What are some insights, things that they don't do, mistakes they make, or things that they need to consider?
That's a really good question. I think the more I live in this world and talk with people, because I have very deep conversations with people and the clients about their money, and relationships with people and money are complicated. You were asking me about growing up and what was that like, and obviously, we all our upbringing shapes in a very big way our relationship to the entire world, but especially, with money too, because if money was something that was a taboo topic or you never seemed to have enough money growing up, those types of situations or any type of money situation, based on how your upbringing was, can really influence how you deal with money later on and your relationship with money later on. And so I think, one of the most consistent things that I see across the board is people equate money with security. And the more money I have, the more secure I will feel, the more secure I will be. Now, whether or not that's the reality, that's the challenging part is we could do everything right, and you could have an external circumstance that completely blows up, your plan for retirement or your business. Here we are in the midst of a pandemic. These are all things that are out of our control. And so I think one of the most interesting insights that I have in working with a lot of people is that I think a lot of us kind of live with our head in the sand that if we do this and this and this and this, then our life will be comfortable and we'll never have any problems. But we always sort of, I think, chase that, the rat race and running around in that little cage, because we can never guarantee that everything's going to be okay. And that manifests in different ways. Like I have certain people who say, oh, well, they just throw their hands up and they say, well, I'm never going to figure this out, and so I'm not going to do any planning at all. That's not good. And then I have other people who, they're so scared of what could happen that they don't make the best decisions about how they invest their money, or a lot of times it leads to them being too conservative or holding on to too much cash, or doing other things. And so those emotions that we have around money, and I think a lot of it stems from equating that to security, can really drive behavior in sometimes good directions, but a lot of times in not great directions either.
Okay, so let's say I'm your client, Ashely, and I'm a clean slate, and you are now to advise me on how I should think about my relationship with money. And by the way, listeners, money is not evil. It's neutral. It's whoever has it in their hands and the direction that it goes. I mean, if I'm a drug dealer and I have the money, or I'm gifting it to a hospital for a new MRI machine, it's still just money. So that being said, Ashely, what are some principles, just generally for the general public, not necessarily even a business owner, or things to avoid or not to avoid for me? So I'm your client, and you're now helping me to understand, okay, what should my worldview or belief system be about money? What do you say? And let's say I have this concern about money and security, what would you say to me, and what have you learned with the decade you've working with clients?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Money in itself is not good or evil. It's just a tool, and it can be used for either. Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because when people come to me, even in a perfect world where they would be a clean slate, it's hard, because it's not my job to impose my money values on them. My job is to figure out what makes them tick and what is important to them. So I have a client who I was talking to this morning, and they want to retire pretty early. And that is completely opposite from what I would want to do. I really like working, and I see myself, working for many, 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 many more years, well into probably what you would consider traditional retirement age. So I think, if I'm doing my job right, I'm getting to the bottom of, what's important to you. And also, if I do see problems, because I do see issues, I have clients who spend too much money, and if they continue on the path that they're on, they're going to accumulate more debt, and they're not going to reach the goals that are most important to them. And so most of the time what I'm trying to do is understand, if I can understand what goals are most important to you, especially like lifestyle goals and what you want to spend your time doing, and, in 5 or 10 years, what does your life look like? What is your value system around money? If you're doing things that are contrary to that, like if you're not saving for retirement and you want to retire and you want to be able to have this time freedom to do more things or spend time with your grandkids, and, maybe you feel like you're a slave to your job right now and you just want to be able to get out of that as quickly as possible, but you're spending $1,000 a month on eating out and going to Starbucks and doing all that, that's something that's telling me that that's not consistent with your values, because you said you wanted to get out of the job that you're in or retire at this age, but you're not going to be able to, because you're actually putting your money somewhere else over here that's not as meaningful to you, because you've told me that. So, my job is really to just make sure that my clients are acting in ways that are consistent with what their values are and what their goals are, and then to point that out to them or correct them when they're not. And the goal is that, by doing planning work with them and having these conversations, it's not a one and done kind of, oh, here's your financial plan and, have a nice life. It's an ongoing conversation, because life changes happen, and people, you might go down this path that may not be good for you, and so we can help course correct sooner, rather than getting 10, 20 years down the road, and maybe you retire and then you have to go back to work 5 years later because it just didn't pencil out and you were spending too much money or whatever that was. So it's really just not my job to impose my values, but to find out and make sure that you are acting in a way with your money that is consistent with your most important goals. And if I'm doing that and being honest with you and helping you to make better decisions so that you can achieve the goals that you want, then that's when I'm doing my job.
Okay, so that being said, I'm going to push you a little harder on this one, Ashely. A little bit.
Okay.
I'm the host, right?
Yeah, go for it.
But even given that, and I realize what you're doing there is to make sure that your responses fit what that person is. But that even being said, then what are the principles that you have learned, over this time that are important for people to consider or think about? So forget that you're trying to match to my wants, but there are some general principles or strategies that you've observed are just recommended if you're in this topic of area of success in life and, enjoying it and managing things correctly. So what are some of those things that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, when you're saying that, the first thing that comes to mind is to not micromanage. The clients that I have that try to micromanage things, and this could be in a variety of things, but the most recent is what happened in the stock market in March and, tail end of March. It was ugly. And people who wanted to micromanage their portfolio or thought that, I better move to the sidelines and get out before while things are bad, and I can get back in when I feel comfortable again. Those usually are disastrous results that come from that. And I was in this industry back in the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. So I remember when clients panicked, and a few of them did sell and go to cash, and some of them just never get back in. But I think that can apply to a lot of things as well. Like, if you hire a CPA or an attorney to do the work for you, it's good to understand what's going on, but you also have to be able to trust that person that you're working with and their professional expertise and their advice, and follow their advice. And because if you're not going to follow their advice, then you might as well not hire them or work with them. And a lot of times with our money, because we're so attached to it, because obviously it's our money, right? I think it's a lot easier for people to make decisions that are not in their best interest, decisions that are a lot of times based on fear or just trying to stop the bleeding, like what was happening in March. And then, they make bad decisions, and then they're kind of stuck and paralyzed because they don't know what to do after that. They don't know, when do I get back into the stock market, or, when do I do this? And so I think having an objective person to be able to help you make smarter decisions with your money and not panic. And it's really tough to keep people on the path sometimes. But when you sell, we've set this plan up and we put this plan in action. But when you sell and abandon that long-term plan, you kind of rip up that plan. And so, I try to do everything I can in my power to convince clients to stay the course when we've set up the plan. But that doesn't always happen. And it's usually the people who desire the most control, who trust the least, that have the hardest time with that when adversity comes along.
And adversity always comes along.
Yeah.
So, part of the principle is to make sure that we don't freak out. There was a famous general who said, no plan lasts past the first engagement with the enemy. Mm-hmm. So we have intentions. Those intentions then, of course, have to be adjusted based on unforeseen things, and those unforeseen things happen in life constantly. So we account for that to a certain degree. Now, when you think about some of the other principles that you've learned with individuals in their life around this whole concept of being successful in life, what else did you want to add to that? Where, this was a delightful client and they were so easy to work with. What are sort of the mindset things that they embrace that really you see them contributing to their success in life?
Yeah, I think the most content and the most generous my favorite clients are usually the ones who have realized at some point along the road that money, like you said earlier, is not good or evil, but it is a tool, and it's a sort of this means to an end. So, I'm living this lifestyle, and I've made these choices, and these are the circumstances that I find myself in because of the choices that I've made. So it's a twofold thing. One is that they're the type of person who doesn't think that the things happen to them. They have some sense of like, oh, well, good or bad, the situation I find that in myself in, that is mostly my doing. Whether I made good decisions or bad decisions, there's a sense of personal responsibility, and very seldom do they blame other people or circumstances when they find themselves in those situations. And so what I've seen in working with clients is that mindset of, being more internally focused as controlling your own destiny has led to better decisions and happier people as a result, particularly later in life. And I think that most of my clients are wired that way, and I think that that's not a coincidence. Because I see people who blame others, or the world is against me, especially when things go south, and it's hard to to figure out and dig yourself out of that hole when that happens, because if it's always about everyone else and not you, and you can't look internally to figure out, well, what can I do differently? What can I change? How can I get out of this? Then I think people are just much less likely to dig themselves out of those holes when they happen. And so those are the clients who tend to be easiest to work with, and able to course correct more easily too when we need to. And also I think they're the ones that seem to be happier as well. And then the other thing that I've seen, a realization that I think most people come to later in life, and by later in life I mean 50s, 60s, and beyond, and not when you're on your deathbed, but when we've spent a few decades on this earth, I think a lot of us who have been working and living our lives and raising our family and all this, we realize later on that money is not going to be this key that will make us happy. And so a lot of my clients I've noticed who are the happiest, and they're the ones who are content with what they have. And for some clients, that's not a lot of money. Not every client that we work with is what I would consider, or what the world would consider, wealthy. We have a lot of what you might call like middle class millionaires, who have just been diligent savers their whole life, and were able to retire and live comfortably, but they're not rich or extremely wealthy. But these are people who are they're more generous, because they realize that they don't have to hold on tightly to every penny that they have in order to just survive. And there's a lot of research, too, to back this up, saying that I've read multiple studies that showed that, around, I think it's like 80,000 of annual household income in today's dollars here in the United States, that anything beyond that, you're not increasing your happiness at all. And so it's just enough to, pay your bills and to enjoy fun things from time to time, and not be deeply buried in debt. But at any age and at any income level, I find clients who are able to find happiness. But then I also have clients who I would consider very wealthy, who are also very unhappy as well. And so one of the realizations that I've come to in just working with a variety of people and understanding their situation, because I see behind the curtain of hundreds of, over the years now, I've seen behind thousands of people's financial circumstances, and there is no correlation at all between the level of wealth and their happiness and contentment and life satisfaction. I just, it's surprising to me, but then again, it's not.
Well, that's a very important insight, where there's not a correlation between the two. Obviously, people's needs have to be met, and you're not being evicted and living on the street. But after that, what you're saying is these are a lot of choices with individuals. What do you think are some of the mindsets of these people who seem to be most content, beyond what you've already said about, okay, they're not linking money to their happiness, but what are some other things that they seem to be doing that contributes to this sort of personal emotional freedom that they're in?
I'd say definitely gratitude. The clients that I have that are most appreciative, most grateful, also tend to be very happy. Also, clients who have taken the time, going back to the value system, to understand what they value most. We all have different value structures. So for some of us, it's family. For others, it could be, spiritual, religious values that are at the top. It could be work. It could be money. That is true for some people. But there's all these facets of our life, and so the clients who spend their time and spend their money in a way that is most consistent with that values hierarchy that they have for themselves individually, I find are the happiest. And just in my own life too, as I've understood my own value structure and what's most important to me, it's really caused me to kind of shift where I invest my time and where I invest my money. And and has really helped me to act in a way that's consistent, so that I do have this, sense of satisfaction because I'm doing the things I'm contributing towards, whether that's time or financial, towards things that are going to be most valuable to me. And the clients who have done that themselves and who have this self-awareness are what I find are most successful and most focused on their goals and what's important to them, and moving in that right direction.
Well, just to affirm your insight, Ashely, there was a study done that said what were the characteristics and quality of people who found meaning and well-being, and one of those was, of course, gratitude and thankfulness in the moment. And really, that is a choice rather than, well, there's nothing to be thankful for. That sort of reflects the opposite situation there. Well, if you can believe it, we only have a few minutes left already, Ashely. Where did the time go? Now, you also have a podcast. Tell us about that.
I do. It's called the 1 Minute Retirement Tip. And it's actually a daily podcast, which sounds crazy, but they're short daily episodes of most of the episodes are 2 to 4 minutes each. And they're structured around a specific theme. So I actually did a theme on gratitude right around Thanksgiving here in the United States. And this week's theme, well, actually coming up in December, we're recording this, but I talk about inflation. I talk about a lot of the financial retirement advice is geared towards people in the United States, but I have listeners outside of the United States as well. And the unique thing about the podcast is it's on all of the popular podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. But it's the only podcast on the Amazon Alexa platform that is focused specifically on helping people make smart decisions as they approach retirement. So it's all focused on retirement and planning for retirement and making those decisions. So the Alexa platform is fairly new. If you have an Alexa device, you can subscribe to what's called flash briefings, and my podcast is one of those that you can subscribe to. So I'm really excited about it because it's growing. Every month it's growing. I've been doing it for just over 2 years now, and I'm almost at 800 episodes. So it's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot in the process, and I'm just super excited because it's been pretty successful so far.
Well, great. Well, thank you for that, Ashely. Now, again, you are TrueNorthRetirementAdvisors.com. Do you have your own website for you personally?
No, I should. I was actually talking to someone about that the other day, but no, it's the shortened version is TrueNorthRA.com, and links to the podcast and all the resources. I've done a bunch of YouTube videos on retirement, particularly for businesses as well. So all of that's there on our website.
Super. So Ashely, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So any final words of wisdom that you have for the audience today as we depart?
Yeah, I would say no matter what your life circumstances, whether you're a business owner or not, is to begin with the end in mind, to think long term about, what you want your life to look like, setting your business up for success, setting your life up for success, to just think ahead in 10, 20 years, what do I want my life to look like? And as Stephen Covey who said, begin with the end in mind. And I think that for people, no matter what stage they are, whether they're at the beginning or getting close to retirement, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to just look beyond the immediate place that you're at right now and think, okay, what do I want my life to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years?
For sure. Well, Ashely, thanks for hanging out. We'll make sure that all your links and everything are in our show notes.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
You're welcome. Stay on the line. So thank you, Secrets of Success listeners. I mean, it is a topic that we don't cover a lot in this show, but it is an important one because every single person on this planet needs to have some kind of connection to resources to live, to just be. And a lot of times we just avoid those discussions. We don't talk about it. We forget about it, or we just keep doing it, as Ashely had said, and just don't want to go there because it was taboo as a kid, or our family never talked about it, or you don't think that money grows on the trees, all these kinds of absurd thought processes. So my encouragement is that you would think about it, you would plan about it, and you will consider it. Now, as always, we thank you for giving us your most valuable commodity, and that's your time. If you like what we're doing, please pass it on, leave a positive comment on whatever platform you're listening on. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Keis.
Thanks for exploring the secrets of success with us. If you want to keep the momentum going, log on to crgleader.com. Scroll to the bottom and sign up for our inspirational emails. You can also take your success to the next level by following us on Facebook and Twitter and connecting with Ken on LinkedIn. We hope you have a great week and look forward to you joining us next time for the Secrets of Success podcast with Dr. Ken Keis.